Amanda Leitner, and welcome to Rochester Rising, where we amplify the stories of Rochester entrepreneurs. Welcome to episode 223 of the podcast. So here at Rochester Rising, we are part of Collider, which is a nonprofit based in Rochester, Minnesota, that activates, connects, and empowers early-stage entrepreneurs within our community. Rochester Rising is the storytelling arm of Collider. We create articles and weekly podcasts to tell the stories of all types of entrepreneurs in Rochester to learn how they started and have grown their business here in the community. Thanks so much for choosing to spend some of your time with us today. We encourage you, if you enjoy the podcast, please make sure you're subscribed. You can listen in really wherever you like to listen into podcasts, but we're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and we have a YouTube channel dedicated to our podcast. A brand new episode comes out every Wednesday. Each week, we also release a short article on Thursdays on our website based on our podcast conversation, and you can find that at rochesterrising.org. Before we launch into the podcast today, we wanted you to hear a little bit from our storytelling team member, Eric, about the stories he's been telling this week on Rochester Rising.
Hello everyone, good day. This is Eric and I'm a storytelling intern at Collider. So last week I got the amazing opportunity to interview Mr. Timi Edu from Pretzel Digital. So Pretzel, it's a business that helps food businesses by building the technology they need to manage their finances and online ordering. They also help these food businesses by giving them an online presence through their marketing and communication services. So the reason I decided to write about Pretzel is because I wanted to advertise them on who they are and what they do in southern Minnesota. Another reason why I wrote a story about them is to tell people their story on how they're approaching entrepreneurship in these kind of times and how they personally overcame all these challenges that the coronavirus posed to businesses in general. This acts as a way to encourage those who are interested in entrepreneurship by sharing about people whom they can take inspiration from. That is why if you read the articles that I write in Collider, there's always a section in the bottom, at the end of the stories, where I write a little bit of word of advice from the entrepreneurs themselves, so that if there's anyone who's reading that is interested in becoming an entrepreneur themselves in the future, there's like a word of advice where they can integrate into their own to be helpful. You can find this story in the Rochester Rising website, and I hope you enjoy it.
All right, so today we share with you podcast episode 223, where I had the opportunity to talk in person with Brianna Prudoehl, owner of Fox Fern Floral, a commission-based floral studio in Rochester, Minnesota. Brianna grew up in Winona, Minnesota on her family farm. She's always loved art and design and originally went to school for graphic design before she transitioned into the floral industry. On the podcast today, we talk with Brianna about the start of Fox Fern Floral, Resiliency, and how she thinks about risk-taking, how she's thinking about the long-term game of her business, boundary setting, and much more. So we'll jump right into the podcast today with Brianna of Fox Fern Floral.
Yeah, so I wanted to start out by asking you, just to let people get to know you a little bit. Besides running your business, what are some things you do in your spare time? What are some things you enjoy doing?
I like to travel. I try to get out as much as I can, but with being pretty busy, I don't get to go as far and as often as I would like, but I love to travel. Even day adventures I like to do that. I love music, any kind of music. So I used to do lots and lots of music events before the world shut down. I've got 2 kids that I've been raising and taking care of, and I'd love to just be around my loved ones and my friends and feel inspired and loved through art and culture and eating new things and drinking new things. And
Oh yeah, I totally get that. I'm
Uh-huh.
hoping some form of festivals will come back this year. We'll
Sure.
see.
Yeah. A little bit. I mean, we saw some live music outside this weekend at Little Thistle. There was a band that played, and people were in the lawns and being very responsible, and it was a beautiful day, and it felt really good.
Was this the tie-dye thing?
Tie-dye one, yeah.
I almost went there on Saturday. I was just, spent the morning making bread. My friend and I did a
Yeah.
King Arthur baking, the
Sure.
bread baking class, and I was just, I don't know, kind of
Yeah,
tired, so I didn't go.
I got myself have you heard of the master class?
The,
The app?
the King Arthur, or, no, I haven't.
So there's an app that you can get. It's called the Master Class, and it's a yearly subscription. I think you can do monthly or yearly, but it's all kinds of different topics, and there are several different teachers that teach it, and they're very short and tangible, ingestible, like 20 minutes long, and they'll have different parts, but acting, baking, writing, singing, playing guitar. I mean, Timberland, Alicia Keys, like all these. Jane Goodall does one on humanitarianism. So there's bread ones from different French bakers and stuff. So I signed up for that, and I've been doing that with COVID and stuff too, because I have to keep my mind fresh and be inspired, and I have to always be learning something. And I try to do that every winter when my season slows down a little bit anyways, is find something new to learn about in the winter. And like a new craft to dip my fingers in a little bit. So
Yeah. No, I totally hear you. Definitely, keeps your mind going, keeps you whatever.
Yeah.
Bread is kind of hard, too.
bread is hard. Bread is hard. My son loves to bake and cook, and so that's something that we do a lot together, and because I enjoy it as well. And he's like, let's make sourdough bread. I'm like, I don't think we're there yet.
I have not tried that. That takes like days.
I'm like, I think we need a little bit of time, a little bit more experience before we delve into that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is something I have not tried either. But it's nice he, wants to do things with you.
Yeah. Not very often, but the cooking is the one I can get him to eat.
Right. How old is he?
16.
So he sounds like a teenager.
Yeah.
That's good. Teach him how to feed himself. No.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, he has to. My kids have to be pretty self-maintained in the summertime. I'm pretty busy, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very seasonal business. So you're from Winona, right?
I'm from the Winona area. Yep, just on top of the bluff.
Cool. So how did you get to Rochester and decide to set up your business here?
I didn't make any decisions. It was kind of all just happened, honestly. I grew up on our family farm. My father was the only male, so he bought some acreage on the corner and farmed with my grandfather. So when he married my mother, we were born and raised there. My grandmother was a master gardener. She had acres and acres of gardens, and she did everything. She was your quintessential, beautiful Midwestern farm grandmother, kind and sweet, and always had cookies baking and chickens and cats running around. So I got to spend the majority of my childhood with her. She was pretty much the one who took care of me the most. So I'm very grateful for that, and it really shaped who I was and my interest in flowers and gardening and everything. And then when I was 17, I just was really bored with the educational system of the small school that I was going to, and I decided I wanted to do post-secondary. So I moved up here with my mother. She moved up here when I was 13. So I moved up here with her, and I went to college, and I graduated with my college associate's degree. Same month I graduated with my high school education. And I did graphic design because I was always really artistic. When I was in high school, I was always painting and always doing really creative stuff and making my own clothes and everything. And I knew I wanted to do something with art in life, but I had many different mediums in which I dipped my fingers in, and I hadn't at that age really solidified what was my calling, what was going to be my medium of choice. And I thought back in 99, 2000 when I graduated, graphic design was really up and coming, and it was really new, fresh, and I felt that it would have a more tangible ability to maintain a sustainable lifestyle as an artist, because I know that is definitely something that is a legitimate concern for people in the arts, to be able to be sustainable. And I did that for some years, and I hated it. And I realized that sitting behind a computer all day long was just not fulfilling me at all. I didn't realize how motivated I was to be outside. And then the big crash happened, like in 2009 with the economy, and my husband at the time lost his job, and so I went back to serving because that's all we had to do. And then I started serving in a restaurant in town here, and some of the more influencers in town started seeing some of my work as a restaurateur, asked me if I would do some. We got in a pickle one day, and he's like, "Will you do this?" I'm like, "I'll try." So I started doing some of the flower arrangements, and then people were starting to ask who did them, and people just kept on asking me to do work, and I thought, well, shoot, I could probably start a business with this.
It definitely requires, it requires some design skill. Like, you just don't throw flowers in a bowl. I mean, there's height, there's, fullness, color. It's a skill for sure.
And there's not a lot of, you really have to give into the botanicals, because there's only so much manipulation that you can achieve. So you really have to have an understanding of layering and textures, and how it moves, and how it's gonna last, and what to do with it. And you can't put a flower in it and be like, "Oh, I don't like it like that," and just bend it a little bit, where I don't like that. I don't like the color of that rose. I'm just gonna paint it, So there's the tricks. Got to be mindful about that. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about Fox Fern Floral? So for people not familiar with it, what is the business, and what kind of services do you provide in the community?
Yeah, well, something that I noticed when I started dipping my toes in the floral world of Rochester, that because of Mayo Clinic, the majority of the flower sales that were happening here were FTD, and 1-800-Flowers, because people were sending flowers to all of our, patients at the clinic. So it had created a large gap in the market for a artistic, creative, botanical, more commissionary type of a studio. And I knew that they existed because there were some florists around the world and even in the metro there are some phenomenal floral designers too. And these people don't have retail shops. They have studios where it's commissioned work. With floral too, because I was really grateful because the amount of experience I had in the restaurant industry, because I served for like 20 years, it's very congruent to the platform of floral because they're both perishable. So there was a lot of systematic ways that the business worked that I could influence into the floral part of it. Because of that, because of it being perishable, having the liability of doing a retail store and people walking in and buying stuff or ordering stuff was just not something that I felt was a responsible way to use money, especially because Rochester is a little fickle when it comes to the arts in this town, and I wasn't sure how people were going to take it and understand. And I didn't want to be married to being set in a retail store from 9 to 5. I'm pretty gypsy-like, I'm pretty bohemian, and I like to jump around and kind of do what I want when I want. And I knew that would hinder my time from other things. So it's a studio, it's a floral studio, commission-based. You can, order deliveries. I do, deliveries on the website. That's been getting a little bit more traction, so that's been a really nice avenue since COVID has happened. And then I've done a lot of interior design too, and I've done a lot of like patio commercial designs. So I designed Hefe Rojo, I designed the Doggery, I designed a few other restaurants and consulted on a few larger other restaurants in town. So I really like that aspect of design as well.
Cool. I do enjoy the Hefe Rojo patio.
Yeah.
It is very intentional, Yeah.
Yeah.
So your customers are a mix of kind of individuals and businesses, or?
Yeah, I do a lot of events. I work with a lot of brides, but they're usually... My clients are people that know that they want to work with me. They are people who are intentionally care about their flowers. They're not people who just want to walk in and pick A, B, or C. They're ones who value design and value floral and appreciate it as an art form. And so that a lot of times equals a more expensive price tag and more affluent people who have more money to spend on that. So I really like it. I love event design. Love it. I've done a lot of music festival stage design, and I've done a lot of designing of events, like the whole entirety of events as well. And I really like that because I think over everything, all of those things, I think my true talent comes in what I'm really good at is looking at a big space and knowing how it's all going to work. I can just look at, a big, huge space and know how things should move and know how people will move and know how to organize the event. It's almost kind of like I can see it. Like when I close my eyes, I can see how it's supposed to be. Not just throwing a centerpiece down on a table, but when I talk to my brides and grooms or I talk with my event planners, I think about how the whole harmony of the whole day is going to move and how everything works together and how you want your guests to feel throughout the whole day, from the minute they get out of their car and walk into the event space to when they see you for the first time and see your flowers and what kind of food they eat and what the linens are going to be like. It all goes together.
It's designing the whole experience.
Yeah, it's a harmony, it's different notes that sound good together. So
So it sounds like you got into floral really
organically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I did, yeah.
your grandma, like spending so much time. So is that kind of how it started, or how did you originally get interested in saying, hey, this is something I could do?
I've always liked floral and gardening, and we've always been gardeners, honestly. Like my grandma always had acres of gardens, seriously, with raspberry patches, blackberry patches, apple orchard, grape. I mean, like our farm, we have 360 acres.
Wow.
My grandma's garden was probably a good 3 of it in the corner. So I learned a lot about gardening, and we gardened to eat. We canned. We made our own sauerkraut. We made our own butter, We milked about 150 head. If I get that 100, 150, I think. My dad and grandpa stopped farming when I was quite young and did more work on the farm. It started turning as a society for small farmers to actually make a living. And so we did more work in the crops and that kind of stuff. We never had a lot of flowers. There was never a lot of design work. But I always loved art, and when I was in high school, that was always translated into more painting and stuff like that. But when I put it together, it just worked, and I didn't even think about it. It wasn't something that was calculated at all. I just was thrown into a situation, and I was like, I'll try it, and it just worked.
I guess that's how you have to be most of the time, is just taking advantage of opportunities that
I wing it all the time. I wing it all the time. And I think that resiliency has been something that has benefited me very well, because I'm never afraid to try anything, and I'm not afraid to fail, because I don't think of it as a failure. I think of it as I'm learning what isn't going to work, so now I can just move on to something else. And so I've taken chances. And I've thought outside of the box, and I think with not being a formally trained florist, it has really broke down boundaries for me to think outside of the box, to do things differently.
Yeah, I heard a few weeks ago, I was reading a book or listening to a podcast or something that said, like, you don't fail, you either learn or you succeed, or it works. Like, there is no failure.
And I don't know why I just wasn't ever afraid to really fail, because I just thought, okay, I'll try something else. I just thought this world is so big and it's so brilliant and it's so beautiful that there's got to be something that's going to work. So I'm not afraid to keep trying, I'm not afraid to keep exploring, and I always had a thirst for learning. I love to learn. I don't know, I just never really cared about failing. So.
No, that's the mentality you have to have as a business owner.
I think so. Yeah.
So do you have an impressive garden now at home? Do you do a lot of gardening now?
I do. I don't really at my home, because it's all shade in the backyard. But in the back of the studio, it's kind of a little kept secret. I have a pretty phenomenal backyard. I've had a few weddings back there. People have wanted to get married, and I have my own little greenhouse. Every year I do something a little bit more So I have my own little greenhouse, and I got it heated this year, so now I'm planting all my own heirlooms. My gardens in the back are mostly produce because me and my family loves vegetables. I mean, my kids love. There's not a vegetable that they won't eat. So I've taught them how to pickle and how to churn butter and how to make sauerkraut. And I've taken those skills. My grandma taught me all that, and I've taught my kids how to do it. So it's something that we do together as a family. So most of my gardens are produce.
That is super cool. So for Fox Fern Floral, you source most of the flowers locally, or all of them. So
I do source them locally, yeah.
So
I tried to.
So what does the fresh flower space look like here? Are there a lot of people growing? Do you kind of struggle to find what you're looking for sometimes?
No, it was a really hard start.
Okay.
It was a very hard start. So when I first started, about 10, 11 years ago, 12 years ago now-ish, there was a very, very big gap in the market. So when you go to the farmers markets and you see the beautiful, beautiful arrangements just the bundles that they're selling for $10, $20 that are phenomenal, right? That was the only way that local people used to be able to sell their product, because what was going on was the floral world was really monopolized, and these large growers across the world were kind of cutthroating everybody else because they could import and export such high quantities and then for so cheap. And then these big box wholesalers. So in the metro area, there's one really big one and a couple small ones kind of sprinkled around. And they have their buyers that source from all over the world, like Ecuador. Right now, for the last while, has been the world's largest producer of roses. But now that Ecuador is having all their volcano problems, now we're not getting much stuff shipped in from the South America area. Holland was the world's biggest provider of bulbs, tulips, hyacinths, those kinds of things. With COVID, when it first started, the Vatican canceled Easter, and so Holland was the Vatican supplier of everything Easter for floral. Holland fed all their bulbs to their cattle.
Oh, jeez.
California growers. California has some fantastic growers, but it was always more expensive, which was crazy to me because it was more local than shipping it across the world. Because of COVID, they can't get workers to work the field, so they're turning everything and they've plowed everything over and they're growing marijuana. So right now is a really, really hard time to get floral anywhere. Because of these very large growers, what was going on was these wholesalers were undercutting local farmers, and they were saying, if you want to sell your floral here at the wholesaler, we want you to sign exclusivity clauses, we want you to be able to provide certain numbers of blah, 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 and that's just not realistic for those kinds of growers. So there is a huge gap in that market. Which is why you saw everybody growing, just selling them at farmers markets. Well, a few years ago, a woman in the metro who who still is a florist, and she was for many years, she's a fantastically beautiful woman. Her name is Christine. She saw this hole in the market, and she got really, really frustrated. And because of the popularity in the metro for farm to table with produce, there was a huge distribution center that was built right outside of. Well, it's kind of, south. It's kind of actually like West St. Paul. East St. Paul. And they created this big distribution center where all these local farmers could come in and bring their product. Huge coolers, everything, loading docks. And then the restaurants and the grocery stores in the metro could come there, get their produce and go. So she talked them into every Wednesday making a floral one. But it's only for florists, and you had to be invited to participate. So I was the only florist in Rochester that she invited to participate. And there's about 30 different growers within the radius of the metro area, and the product is phenomenal. And so that has been a business changer for me.
Yeah.
Since that's opened.
Yeah, no, that's great. Like you said, if you have all these people growing things locally, you don't need to ship stuff from California or Holland or wherever.
And it was interesting to see systematically how they went to such extents to organize shipping. I mean, you cut that rose in Ecuador, it's been touched by the person who's cutting it, and then it's being packed, then it's getting put put on an airplane, then it's being put on a boat, then it's unpacked, and then it's brought into Miami, and then it's put on another airplane. Then it's sent to wherever, and then it's put on another truck to the wholesaler.
Right.
Then it's put on another truck to the florist. So it's been out of the field for a very long time. And that was easier for them to get that product cheaper than it was for them to, source locally. So I'm glad that that's changed. I'm glad that they've built another road for that, and it's awesome. You have to be a lot more flexible. There's a lot of uncertainties with botanicals. You have no idea what the weather's going to be. Oh, maybe it'll flood. Maybe insects will come in. Maybe a volcano will explode. Maybe we'll get a pandemic. There's just so many strange things that are out of our control that I tell my clients, let's talk about your color scheme. Let's talk about your textures. Let's talk about your shapes. But then let me work in a larger sandbox to fulfill those needs, but fill them with the best product that is coming out of the fields at the time. Because we're planning events 9 months down the road. I can't predict what's going to happen 9 months down the road.
You seem very comfortable with risk and kind of rolling with things.
Well, it's not failed me yet, so and I'm just going with it. And I would rather take that risk and produce a high superior product at the end of the day than box ourselves in.
Yeah. Like you said, it's kind of like setting expectations too, is this is what you want, but it might not happen because we don't have control over whatever. Locusts eating all the flowers or something.
Yeah, that happens, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it does, yeah. So you said you started about 12 years ago in 2008-9.
When was I officially LLC'd? I officially LLC'd in 2011.
Okay.
2010. Yep.
I can't do math.
I can't either. I'm like, what is that now? And it's hard for me too because I was working at it longer than that, but that's when I was officially LLC'd.
Okay, nice. So yeah, it's been 11
years?
A while. Yeah.
Yep.
Like you said, you take only like a small amount of customers each year because you're kind of a custom boutique. Really put energy into them. I think that's hard for a lot of people because they have this idea that more customers are better. And we know that's not true.
No, it's not true. Gus Shafilius, the best piece of advice he told me once was, Brianna, not all clients are going to be good clients. And he said, not all business is good business. So be picky and choosy about who you decide you want to work with. And I learned that very fast. And there are people that I will not work with because the sustainability and I don't know what word I'm looking for. Integrity. The integrity of my product and what I'm trying to do, this just doesn't always work with, It's just not always seeing eye to eye. And I tell the people who I do events for, I said, my MO is not that I get your business. I said, my MO is that you have the best event that you can have. And if that includes me, good. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Because not everybody's for everybody. And I would rather have a respect for each other and just call it than try to force something. Yeah.
That's so hard for people to learn that, you will get the business, but you'll get, the right business and the people that are going to be happy. Everyone's going to be happy when you find the right fit.
I always think about the long game in business. Instead of instant gratification, it's very easy for us to be instantly gratified, right? And I have always tried to think about what could this do to me in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. Either what can this decision do? What benefit or what harm could it do? So I always try to be very mindful about thinking ahead and thinking forward. With everything, with how I interact with clients, what I choose to do and not do, my employees, how I raise my kids, my friends, everything. And I try to act with intention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so important. Everything's reputation-based, too.
It is, yeah.
When someone has a good experience, that's going to be great for your business.
Yeah, and something that was really hard for me, too, is there was a long time when I was really intense about, misunderstandings or not seeing eye to eye with my business. And I realized it wasn't an insecurity thing, but my business was not just a job. It was my life. And it was how I fed my children. I've been raising my kids on my own for about 10 years without really any help. And my business was really important to me, so I would find myself heightening emotionally to the levels, just as a natural response. But when I started stepping back and understanding why I was behaving in the way that I was and what was triggering me, I was able to realize the passion and how to take that and make it work for me in a more graceful, effective way to be able to communicate more efficiently with people. And it's worked out. I think I'm getting better at it. It's worked out really good, but it's hard to see eye to eye sometimes on people's truths, because regardless of what you think is the way the situation went, everybody else is in control of what their own truth is, and you can't take that away from people. So you have to learn how to maneuver through that. So that's what I learned with clients. Like, maybe I have a bride who's really, really upset, and I went 150% above and beyond for her, but she's still pissed, and there was nothing that I could do. I could have went 300% beyond for her. I could have given her all her flowers for free, but she wouldn't care because she decided that she was going to be angry, and that's where she's at. And I can't take that away from her.
Right.
And so instead of allowing myself even to get to that spot, I had almost smell it now on clients when they walk in. I'm like, no, we're not going to be a good fit.
Yeah. That's an acquired skill too, that, like you said, took time to learn.
Yeah, it did. I had to make mistakes. But I didn't see them as failures. Now I know. And I just really, I just go through the consult and listen to them. And I just, will gracefully say the date is either booked or I don't think we're a good fit for each other, or, but it's not for a lack of respect. It's actually because I respect them more. Right. Because I want them to be happy, and that doesn't always mean that involves me. So
you said you don't have a brick and mortar location, but you you do. Okay. Yeah. You're in Cooke Park Design District, right? Yeah. Okay. Which is like kind of a real up and coming area in Rochester with a lot of art design, Hidden World Vinyl Records is there.
Paul and I started that.
Yeah.
Like 6-7 years ago when we moved there. Paul and I coined the design district. Sarah Miller from White Space did the logo design because she was there. Yeah, Paul and I started all that. Paul Bennett from Dwell. And now he's gone, which is sad. But
so, what do you think people should know about this area of town and the businesses in it?
Not a whole lot. I mean, there's nothing else that's been going on because the city has it categorized as something completely different, so we can't get anybody else in there. What's in there is all that. There's nothing else to be developed there. It's impossible. So there's been numerous people for the past 6 years who have tried, and they're unable to develop there. There's no artist that the city makes it absolutely impossible for an artist to be sustainable.
Yeah, which is just extremely.
Yeah, and there's so much garbage with Cooke Park, and there's so many homeless people. I walked back through my alley yesterday to throw my garbage away, and Park and Rec won't let us do anything back there because they say that it's Cooke, Park property, and there's crack pipes everywhere.
Oh, jeez.
My studio got broken into. Everything got stolen last year.
Oh, man.
Yeah, there's homeless people all over. So it's, oh, man, I hope it changes. And I'm always really try to be positive about the opportunities for that. But that's just not going to happen anytime soon there.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems, like a great...
Not unless there's higher-ups that make some decisions.
Sure. Yeah. It's like we were saying, you've been doing this since 2010, 11 plus years. What do you, lots of lessons learned. Do you have anything you wish you knew when you got started that would be helpful for people thinking about starting a business?
Boundaries. I wish I knew how to, what boundaries were. I wish I knew how to set them more appropriately. That was a lesson that was harder for me to learn. I didn't know what that meant. Boundaries are so important. Good boundaries and bad boundaries, I gave up so much of my children's life to run this business. I miss so much because I didn't have boundaries and I just said yes to everything. And in my head, I was doing it all for them. I was like, I gotta feed them,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I felt like at the time, I felt like I was making all the right decisions. But now that they're 16 and 18, I miss so much. So
Mm-hmm.
I wish I would have had a more graceful approach to boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely hear that. It's so hard because you can keep pushing and pushing and getting more clients and growing, and it's like, to what extent does that impact everything else?
Yeah, I gave up so much of my own life. I mean, for 10 years, I've worked 80 to 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
I gave up so much of my own life that I didn't know where Brianna started and Fox Fern stopped. I didn't know. I wish I would have been more mindful about that.
Do you feel now you have more clear boundaries between your personal and yourself in the business? Or?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a couple different reasons. I think, with coronavirus and my business coming to a complete stop, I was forced to.
Yeah.
So that's good, I suppose. A little silver lining there. And just age, and tired. I'm tired. I
hear ya.
It's the physical work. It's farming, Like I farmed for, my whole life, and floral work is no different than farming. The kind of work I do, it's long hours on my feet all the time, heavy lifting.
Right.
In the heat, in the sun, all day long. I love it. It's very satisfying for me, but sometimes I'm just real tired. Really tired.
Yeah. Well, I hear that. Like you said, this past, 2020, there's virtually no events, there was outdoor dining, but people probably weren't putting much.
No, there wasn't
extra
much.
money, yeah.
There was a few small weddings, pretty much lived on deposits from people taking the chance to book events. I got a few grants and loans and stuff like that too. Not much, but anything I was grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
So with all the uncertainties, it's really nice that, entrepreneurs are pretty resilient in the first place. They're pretty resilient people. And I did other things too, like I started looking into other aspects of things that I can do and goods that I could sell that were more hard good type things that still maintain the integrity of what I wanted my brand to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing some of that. But I never knew how it was going to work out, and I've been just running blind forever, so I'm like, just go with it, I suppose, still. So, well, I'm just going to keep going, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So 2021 seems to be a little better with events and stuff. What are your thoughts for this year?
Yeah, 2021's going well. People are tenacious. They just want to get going. We've got a lot of events that's starting to pick up and be really busy, so I'm grateful for that. Get back in the swing of things. Get these old bones moving again. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it.
You'll do it. I feel like you're a fighter, so you're
yeah.
pushing through it.
Yeah, so it is. It's picking up. It's going good. And people are being smart too. Like they're finding other ways to do things. It's been actually really uplifting to see how smart and thinking outside of the box and things that people are doing to create new pathways and opportunities to make stuff work. So I'm seeing a lot of different kinds of things going on.
Like you said, you have to be scrappy, in the end, you're going to be the one to save yourself as a business owner.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out different ways.
Yeah. So people are doing a lot more stuff, a lot more private things at home and just different things like that. So I have a client that wants me to go to Montana this fall because they're going to get married out in Whitefish, and I'm like, sure.
That sounds beautiful. I've always wanted to go to Montana. I have not made it yet. Have you?
Yeah.
Or is this
I've been to Montana several times.
times.
My mother grew up in Wyoming, so
okay.
we used to go to Wyoming quite often. I have a friend that lives in Glacier, some that live in Bozeman. My brother was a snowboard outerwear rep for the past 15 years. So he's traveled the world snowboarding. So yes, we've been to Montana several times.
Yeah, you've been there a lot then. You're familiar.
Yeah.
No, that sounds amazing. Then I'd be like, I'd go to Montana.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, I want to see Glacier National Park before it doesn't exist anymore. Or before there's, no more glaciers.
Yeah, my friend works there, so I probably am going to go stay with him maybe, if he'll let me.
So I always like to ask people too, you could be doing a lot of other things with your life.
Uh-huh.
Why are you passionate about doing this? What drives you to get up and do this every day? Both on the design end and as owning your own business.
That's a really good question. I guess I really like being in control of my success or my failure. I really like, even though I have to work a little harder and I don't go to a 9 to 5 and then when I'm done I punch out and I don't have to think about it. My mind's always been busy anyways. I've always been a busybody. I've always had my hands in things. I've always been working. My mind just doesn't ever stop anyways. So I like that I have a path that I have found that has been able to take that aspect of me and cultivate something tangible with it instead of, just not just letting it go, because the path of art is hard to make sense. It's some people want to do it, but they're insecure about it. They're like, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to be able to actually sell this? So there's a lot of blockages that we put ourselves through as humans to not pursue those things. And I'm proud of myself that I was able to do that. And it's hard to look back and think about that. So maybe one of the first times I ever thought about that. But I'm glad about that. I like the people I've met have made my life so full through this business. I'm so grateful for that, and the amount of friends that I've met and the opportunities that have been presented to me that otherwise would not have if I wouldn't have been doing this. So I love design. I love floral. I really do. Floral makes me really happy. It always has. Gardening makes me really happy. Then in the spring, when you kind of start getting out of your winter depression stuff, the only thing that makes me happy is thinking about planting my greenhouse. It makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that I can be a part of some of the most special days of people's lives.
Yeah.
They get married or they're commemorating a dead loved one.
Yeah.
It's my floral means a lot to those people.
Yeah.
And that's really special.
That's so true. It's something, that's just so memorable about the day. I remember the flowers from my wedding.
Yeah. I have people that'll be like, I'll have a guy, they're like, oh, like an old man. And he's not old. An older gentleman in his 50s or 60s, which would not be somebody you would expect to like flowers, right?
Yeah.
I've had people be like, oh, they're like, oh, you're Brie, I was at a wedding 5 years ago, and I still remember the flowers you did.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to make somebody happy with my floral is fun. When I deliver a flower arrangement and I give it to the person and they weren't expecting it and they just light up and they're so happy. I think that's pretty cool.
That was my last question for you. I'll ask you for any final thoughts for people listening, and where's the best place for people to find you online and in person?
Sure, foxandfernfloral.com, all spelled out, is my website. We've got Facebook, Instagram. If my studio, as my studio's closed, people walk by it a lot. It's in Cooke Park, and I've got the big garage door. People walk by a lot, and they want to look in because I made it pretty. And it's been kind of hard because when I'm working on floral, I can't stop working. I can't stop working every 15 minutes 10 times a day to tell people and give them a tour of the space, because the flowers will literally die. Like if I don't get these flowers in the cooler and in water, I could lose a lot of money. And if I take all that time, then that means I'm at the studio till midnight every night working. Right. So I've done classes, like individual classes where people can come in and just have one-on-one time in the studio, and I've opened it up I've let people have a lot of events there too, like getting married or baby showers or, different things like that, where people can see the space and use the space. I know maybe I should figure out a different avenue where people can come in and see it a little bit more, because people seem like they like to see the space. So
it's all in what works for you, I think, in the end.
Yeah, it's just hard because it's messy, and I get embarrassed because floral work is so messy. And, I try to keep everything clean, but then people, if they want to see the space and I feel like I'm anxious that I should clean it, and then that takes me all this extra time. And I'd like to posture into a more suitable business manner where I have time maybe to fit all that stuff in. But with events, it's just so difficult. It's such hard work, and it's so fast paced, and my mind is just on one task, and that's taking care of the flowers. And it's when I've noticed about myself as of lately that I have I'm very triggered with black and white. So when I'm designing, and I'm almost semi-autistic about it. I'm like OCD about it. So when people come in and they try to talk to me, I don't even hardly hear them or see them. And it's not that I'm trying to be rude or ignore them, but I'm literally designing in my head. Like I'm thinking about step A, B, C, D, all the way up. And when I have to stop, and in my mind I'm on, S, and I got to go back and explain A, B, and C, I go crazy.
Yeah.
So, maybe I should figure that out, but yeah. So the website, Instagram, Facebook, they're all there.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to do this today, hear more about yourself and your journey. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to.
Thanks so much for Brianna for stopping into our recording studio and sharing her story with us today. You can find Brianna's story as well as the article Eric talked about pretzel on the Rochester Rising website at rochesterrising.org. And you can find our podcast really wherever you like to listen in to podcast content. And you can find links to Fox Fern Floral in our show notes. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Rochester Rising podcast today. We appreciate you spending a little bit of your time with us to learn more about the Rochester entrepreneurial and small business community. It's a huge help to us if you rate this podcast so that others can find it and hear more about Rochester entrepreneurs. We'll be back again next week with a brand new episode.